I invite you to take your pew Bibles and if you're not in our sanctuary frequently, our pew Bibles are the New Revised Standard Version. This New Revised Standard Version was published in 1989. In recent years, and I think it came out last year, there is now a New Revised Standard Updated Edition. And our own Dean Leanne Flesher was part of the team that worked on that edition. Isaiah chapter 35, page 578, under the heading, The Return of the Redeemed to Zion. I hope in the reading today you hear the theme, you feel the theme of joy. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it. The majesty of Carmel and Sharon, they shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who are of a fearful heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God, he will come with vengeance, with terrible recompense. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. The lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For the waters shall break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. The haunt of jackals shall become a swamp. The grass shall become reeds and rushes. A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the Holy Way. The unclean shall not travel on it, but it shall be for God's people. No traveler, not even fool, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come upon it. They shall not be found there. But the redeemed shall walk there, and the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. On this Sunday of joy, loving God, may joy surround us. May joy find us. May joy lead us. Amen. So again, greetings to all in the sanctuary, those who are joining via live stream, those who are joining via Zoom. During the season of COVID, I started wearing a bow tie most Sundays. I'm not wearing a bow tie today because the tie I'm wearing, has particular significance. It was one of the ties that belonged to Jesus Portillo. And when I think of Jesus, I think of joy. At his memorial service, a joyous service this past June, Casa was giving away his ties, and this Christmas tie was the one I took. And so I wear it in joyous memory of Jesus this morning. In the prophet Isaiah's words, as Isaiah described the joyous return of the exiles from Babylon back to Judah, Jerusalem, In verse 8, there is this promise of a highway, a smooth, clear, safe road for the exiles to travel. The traditional dangers of heat and thirst and wild animals would not bother them. The road would be a representation of heaven. It would be representative of a divine road building project by which all people can come. Row, there we go. Where was I? Well said. The massive road building project that is the interstate highway system, while important and functional and useful, also divided communities across the nation. In the 1619 project, this massive reflection on the impact on the lives of African Americans since the first slave ship arrived in Virginia in 1619. In the 1619 project, Kevin M. Cruz notes that the highways, these interstate highways, that many urban freeways, steered along routes that ran right through the neighborhoods of racial minorities. He tells us that the community leaders decried the practice of white men's roads through black men's bedrooms. The interim report of the California Task Force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans confirms this reality. Funded by the federal government, the California state and local government also destroyed black homes and communities through park and highway construction, urban renewal, and by other means. In our neck of the woods, just trace the routes of Interstate 880, Interstate 80, Interstate 580, Interstate 980. In the reading for the third Sunday of Advent, the prophet Isaiah describes a different sort of road building project. He envisions a road that represents renewal rather than destruction, a road that represents unity rather than division, a road through the desert that will bring the weary exiles home rather than a force that will leave them in isolation. Isaiah 35, 8 through 10 declares, "A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the Holy Way. No traveler, not even fool, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come upon it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, sorrow and sighing shall flee away." Not all roads are equal. Not every road building project is praiseworthy. Yet the prophet's words invite us to consider the divine road building project that is Advent. The story of the season is that of the God of heaven building a road to earth, a road that leads we weary travelers in the ways of justice and peace, a road that brings us home, a road on which the street lights shine with the light of everlasting joy. Now, don't get me wrong. That divine highway, that highway to heaven, that highway from heaven, that highway for heaven, is a road that can be very demanding. Just ask Father Johann Bourdin, a priest in the Russian Orthodox Church in a small Russian town, in his words, in the middle of nowhere. Perhaps you read his story this week in the New York Times. Shortly after Vladimir Putin, with the blessing of the Russian Orthodox leadership, shortly after Vladimir Putin launched a war against Ukraine, Father Bourdin posted a letter on his church's website and preached a sermon calling that war a moral travesty. He said it was an example of brothers attacking brothers, of Christians killing Christians in the name of Christ. As such, it needed to be decried, resisted as best one could. When he preached that sermon in his small Russian Orthodox church in a small village in the middle of nowhere, by his count, there were all of a dozen people in attendance, maybe a dozen more watching online. Shortly, and I mean hours after the sermon, he was summoned to the local police station where he was interrogated, threatened, bullied, and charged with speaking against the Russian government. And just a few days later, he was tried in that village. And even though some church members were called as witnesses, they said they couldn't hear that well, or since it was church, maybe they had fallen asleep. Still, he was found guilty and found the equivalent of $273, which was more than 1 month's salary for him. Father Bourdin, citing the sacredness of his conscience, resigned from the church and started seeking another call. The Russian Orthodox establishment has said they will defrock him if he is unable to find one. Still, even in the face of all this hardship, Father Bourdin insists that God is making a way. If not making a way to save his career, making a way to get his message out. He notes that there were no more than 24 that heard his sermon the first time. But now, because of all the global publicity he is getting, in Europe, in Asia, in South America, in Australia, in North America, because of all the global publicity, millions have now heard his sermon, heard his call to resist this unholy war. And Father Bourdin celebrates the way that God is making a way for the good news of peace, the strong word of justice, the joyous call of hope to get out. In the gospel reading that accompanies the third Sunday of Advent, Matthew 11, chapter 2, verses Matthew chapter 11, verses 2 through 11, we hear the story of John the Baptist. Remember John the Baptist, the great and powerful preacher, the one who baptized in the Jordan in the wilderness, the one who proclaimed, "Make way for the Lord who makes a way." Well, in Matthew 11, as the story has progressed, apparently that John is having some questions about whether the way Jesus is preparing is trustworthy. So John sends some of his disciples to Jesus to ask a rather important, even loaded question. Are you the one, or should we look for another? As Matthew tells the story, Jesus does not rebuke John or his disciples for having the temerity of asking a challenging question. He simply replies, well, look around. Look around at the impact of my work. Am I tearing people down, or am I building them up? You decide. And then he goes on to praise John for being such a strong and clear prophet. John sends his disciples to Jesus asking, are you building a highway home or a road to nowhere? And Jesus answers gently. By not attacking John for asking questions about the way he was constructing his road, Jesus assures both John and us that when we come to those moments when we question the reliability of the way of Jesus, and if we are honest with ourselves, those moments come. Is this road the right way? Is this road worth all the trouble? Is this a highway home or a road to nowhere? Jesus assures us that when we question the challenges of traveling that road, when we long for a bullet train to prosperity rather than a highway to heaven, we have not lost standing in the community of his followers. Like John, we still belong. We worship a God who has a demonstrated ability to make a way, to help us find a way. Advent teaches us that it is often ours to wait for that way, to watch for that way, to walk in that way, to witness in that way. Advent is many things: a season of contrasts, a season of waiting, a season of hope, a season of discerning the road the Holy One is building for us, a season for walking that road in joy. But to be clear, sometimes that road is demanding, and sometimes we wonder where it is leading us. If you, like me, worry about that way, take heart. We're not alone. We are in the company of the great prophet John the Baptist, of whom Jesus declared emphatically, he, like you, is on a good and worthy road. And so today, with all joy and with all honesty, we celebrate the divine road building project that is Advent. A road that finds us where we are and bids us walk the way home. Amen. Amen.